Hello and welcome back to the My Journey podcast presented by me, Matt Johnson. Thanks for listening and I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. This time I'm speaking to a Lemans 24-hour race winning driver, Guy Smith. I really enjoyed this interview as it was an insight into a world I know very little about. He takes us through from starting off with his first ever go-kart to racing on one of the biggest stages in his sport. It really is fascinating to hear about his experiences throughout it all and how it all works when you're trying to get to the top. Just to note, we recorded this episode at the offices of Greenlight Sport, a company which Guy is involved with and we talk about towards the end. Ben, who he mentions, was in the office that day, so if you hear someone moving about in the background, that's who it is. But a big thanks to both of them for having me that day. It was great to do this interview in their offices, which is full of ace sporting memorabilia. As ever, if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe, leave a review and share it with a friend. I don't get paid for this, I just do it because I want to try and inspire people, so if you can share it with others, it would be much appreciated. It also means I'm able to attract more guests for future episodes, which I hope you want to. So here it is, the My Journey podcast with Guy Smith. Please welcome to the podcast a man who has achieved something only 32 other Brits have done. It's Lemans 24-hour winning driver, Guy Smith. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, good.
So thank you very much for doing this today for me. We're down in your nice offices here for Greenlight, which we'll come on to a bit later. But I wanted to start right at the beginning. So school life, how was that for you growing up?
School life was good. I actually, I grew up kind of in East Hull, so I used to live in a little village called Lely in East Yorkshire, and I went originally to Burswick Primary School and then to South Holderness School, which I since found out Tommy Coyle also was a pupil of. So school for me was good. I was very fortunate that I was obviously karting at a young age, and the school, so particularly South Holderness, were very supportive of me. It required a lot of time away from school, and they were always very supportive of me and letting me have time off school to go and pursue my racing as long as I caught up when I got back. And I'm sure that other schools wouldn't have let me do that, but they could see that getting an education or a worldly education by visiting different places was as important as being at school. So yeah, it was good. I wasn't particularly good at school, I have to say, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And was karting your only hobby and interest, or were you a bit of an all-rounder in sports and things like that?
I always liked sports, but I think it took up so much of my time. So obviously, hand in hand with racing is sort of the physical side of it, the training side of it, and I think that's become more apparent as time's gone on. But certainly back then, I remember I used to go sort of running and play squash and tennis to try and keep fit, even from a very, very young age. But racing was always pretty much took up most of my time, and the rest of the time I say was catching up on schoolwork. So I just loved everything about racing and driving.
So you got into karting, was it 12, 13 years old that you started?
Actually, racing then, I started racing when I was 10, so 10 was the youngest you could actually drive back then. Now you can actually start racing at the age of 6. Wow. But I was driving from the age of 5, so originally started off where we had a go-kart and I couldn't reach the pedals or anything, so I used to sit on my dad's knee, he'd do the pedals and I'd sit on his knee and steer it. And we used to sort of go on the grass through the sort of trees and stuff and what have you. So that was great to sort of get a bit of an idea of what was going on. And then as I obviously got older and a bit taller, I could reach the pedals and started driving for fun. So again, it wasn't until I was 10 that I could actually start racing. And I did my first race at a racetrack in Tilbury down near London. And I remember getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, going down there with my dad and doing the race and coming last. And that was my first sort of intro into racing. But great, I loved it. I loved everything about it, and great experience.
Brilliant. So you actually went on to become British Junior at a very young age as well. Was that expected? Did you expect to achieve that kind of thing, or was it just happened?
It's like anything, isn't it? I think start off. When we started doing the racing, particularly when I said losing, coming last in my first race, I don't think we had any real sort of plans at that stage. It was just a case of getting experience, and I think it's like anything. The more you do, you're a little bit better, and suddenly you're not finishing last, and then you're winning a couple in the local events, and then you start to go to the sort of national events, and you arrive there, and there's all these big boys there, and you kind of rock up, and suddenly you don't embarrass yourself, and you have a couple of good races, and the next thing you know, you start winning national events, and within a couple of years, I got to the point where I became the British junior champion, and at that point it started to become a little bit more serious. It was still all about having fun and what have you, but it became a little bit more serious. I started to get some attention from some of the big go-kart manufacturers. And I think when I was 15, 16, moving into the seniors, I actually got to drive for the biggest kart manufacturer company called CRG in Italy. And they actually were paying me, I think it was paying me about £30,000 a year to go and race go-karts. So, that was the real kind of point where it became a little bit more serious than just going, for fun. So it's really good.
And was it that you just pure enjoyment that you did it, or were you inspired by did you watch racing drivers on TV or parents?
Originally, so my dad was obviously, he ran the Swift Group, so that's sort of the business side of it. But before that, he was always into sort of rallying. So he used to do road rallying. So they would sort of literally turn up. They'd have a route, usually leave from a pub at midnight, and they would go through to sort of 4 or 5 in the morning, and they had it was all fully illegal, all back roads. They weren't even closed off the roads, and he would do that, and he was really quite good at that, quite successful. But as the business demands became, my granddad died when my dad was I think he was 21, so he had to sort of at that point focus more on the business. So the rallying kind of took a bit of a sidestep. But he was always into motorsport, and he helped sponsor a guy called Dave Scott, who was a young racing driver, British racing driver, who worked his way through up to he was a Formula 1 test driver for Lotus, really up-and-coming driver. So I kind of grew up around him and going to races and watching him race, and obviously with my dad's involvement as well. I always had this kind of looked up to them as kind of that's what I'd love to do one day. It's always kind of been in the family or around me. So that's been the inspiration.
You then moved up into professional racing. How was that change for you from junior to professional?
Cars. So really what happened was when I was 16, I started, obviously that was when I got my driving licence. So I actually entered a scholarship called First Time Racing, which is actually ran at Blighton Park in Gainsborough, and I won the scholarship, and with the scholarship it meant you got a season's free racing, and it was sponsored by Auto Windscreens, so they funded it, and so I won that, so it meant I got a season's free racing. So my first race was at the end of I think it was the end of October, and my birthday is in September, so I passed my driving test. I had one lesson, and my driving instructor said, "There's no way you should go in for your test because you're not ready." But I had this race planned, literally the following weekend. So I thought, well, I'm going to go in for my test anyway, and if I pass it, I'll get to race. If I don't, then I'm screwed. But anyway, somehow I managed to pass my driving test, and with literally one lesson. And then I was able to race it through the following weekend, and that was where I made the sort of transition. So at that point, do I go back to school? And I think I was doing my resits, that's how bad I was at school. Or do I sort of do the racing thing? And to be fair, to my family, they were always very supportive in the respect that they knew that I had potential to make it in car racing. But of course, at that stage in your career, you're at the very, very start of it. So, but they were really supportive and said, look, give it a go and see how you get on. So, that was it. At that point, you start the whole journey. Which is exciting, but obviously, you don't quite know how it's going to turn out. So luckily, it's been okay. So
you must have turned a few heads early on because you moved to America quite early on in your career to race over there. How was that transition? Is it different over there?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I'd sort of done stuff in Europe and had some success, but it became kind of apparent. I tested for Williams when I was 21. And there was a lot of interest, but at the time there was no 21-year-olds racing in Formula One, which obviously today is complete opposite to that, and they want drivers as young as possible. But at that time, I remember testing Damon Hill's car, and he was probably in his early 30s. So to let a 21-year-old loose was not at the time not really an option. So I was kind of looking to see where to go, and I knew some guys in America, so I went over there to have a look and see what the racing was like over there, and I loved it. And I met a guy called Stefan Johansson, who he was an ex-Ferrari and McLaren Formula 1 driver, and we did a deal to race in a series called Indy Lights, which is the one just below IndyCar. And so I spent the next sort of 2 years racing Indy Lights over in the States, which was fantastic. I mean, it was a great racing experience, but also a great life experience, because it was the first time I'd actually lived away from home properly, different country as well. I think grew up quite a lot during that time. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And does achieving accolades such as like the Rookie of the Year and things like that, does that help build your name within the sport, or do you feel there's quite a lot of accolades out there that people can win on?
I think there are. I think obviously anything like that, anything you can add to your CV is always good. And all drivers are, like in any sport, everyone's trying to move up the ladder and pursue a career. So anything that you can add to your CV and is going to help you. I think the racing in America was fantastic, but at the end of sort of 99, I was trying to break into IndyCar, but there wasn't really any opportunity. So I was a little bit of a crossroads as to where my career may go, whether it was going to stop completely and I was going to go back and end up making caravans or work in the caravan factory, or whether I was going to carry on, being able to forge a career in motorsport. And back to Stefan Johansson, who I mentioned earlier, who I drove with in Indy Lights. He said, I'm doing a sports car team and I'm going to go and race at Le Mans and in the American Le Mans series. And I'd never really even considered Le Mans. I didn't really know that much about it. I knew obviously about the race, but didn't know too much about it. And so I thought, well, I've got nothing else going on, so definitely give it a try. And to be driving with him, first of all, I learned a heck of a lot, because obviously with his experience and what have you, it brought me on as a driver. And then to go to Le Mans for the first time, I remember arriving there on like the Monday before the actual race itself, and it was relatively quiet, but throughout the week, more and more people arriving. The event was building and building and building. And of course, come race weekend, I was just absolutely blown away just how big it was. I think there was 300,000 spectators. A good proportion of those were British. That's the thing about Le Mans. It's like a British race that's held in France. It's quite unique. So, and although we didn't actually finish the race because the car had a mechanical failure, I got Le Mans Rookie of the Year, which is the fastest of all the newcomers. And at that point, I realised this is somewhere I need to be, or want to be in the future, and realised the importance of it. And at the end of that year, my team manager, a guy called John Wickham, who was working for that particular team, had been taken on board by Bentley, who were looking to make a return to Le Mans, to car racing, and had appointed John as the team manager. So they kind of, unbeknown to me, sort of said to John, we're looking to assemble a team of drivers, a mixture of youth and experience, to lead our team back to Le Mans. And John was obviously happy with what I'd done so far that year, and put my name forward to Bentley at the end of the year. So that was the sort of start of my relationship with Bentley, really.
Fantastic. So the people that you're driving with at them younger ages, do you kind of work your way through with them? Are they like, even though they might be on opposing teams, do they become like colleagues?
You do. They're very much your sort of colleagues. You're racing each other. You're all trying to get the break, whether it be Formula 1, IndyCar, or manufacturer drive, where you actually get to the point where you've been paid. So everybody's sort of trying to. We all know each other and get on well, but we're obviously all trying to beat each other. And of course, when you're racing and working with people, teammates of similar age and ability, you're all learning together. And then suddenly you start to work with somebody with real experience that's been there and done it. Your learning sort of curve goes through the roof. So, it's sort of invaluable, really. And then when I did eventually join Bentley in 2001, I was partnered up with a guy called Stefan Ortelli, he'd won Le Mans in 1999 and was an Audi factory driver, and Martin Brundle. And between the two of them, particularly Martin, the experience that he'd gained from sports car racing and Formula 1 in the past, you'd sit in the debrief with him, and the way that he would describe the car and this and that and the other, you would just learn so much more. So when I was doing a debrief, I realised actually, what was expected of me as a professional, and the reports that he would write and everything else, and the way he would analyse the whole team. I was like, kind of like sort of sat back in my chair and was like, yeah, I really, there's a lot I can learn from him, and it was my job to kind of suck all that sort of information and experience up, And it's something that I've taken with me today. And I try and enforce that on the young drivers that I work with or younger teammates that I've had and say, look, I try and be an example to them of the things that I've learned so that they can look at me, hopefully, and say, well, yeah, he's got this experience and, that's what I need to do to work in the future. So,
and you're obviously on a bigger stage then as well. So do you recognise that, like, from going from karting in front of, people and things like that to going onto a stage where you might not know half the people in the crowd and people watching?
Yeah, it's different because, when you go into the sports car stuff, you're on a different stage. It's actually slightly different because most people you're racing against are actually people you've looked up to. Because so now I'm coming in and I'm very much the kid in the paddock. And a lot of the guys that are in sports cars are either, current F1 drivers or they've retired from Formula One and they've gone into sports car racing. So usually it's full of all these big names and like icons. So when I've been coming up through the formula, there's all these names like Brundle and people like that you've always looked up to and respected. I remember when I was at a Formula 3 race, when I was probably 7-8 years old, watching Dave Scott, the guy that we helped, and he was racing against Martin Brundle. So the fact is like, I remember 6 years old watching a guy racing Formula 3, and then God knows how many years later on, I'm actually sharing a car with him at Lemans. It's kind of like bizarre. And also when you're representing a manufacturer, you sort of go from racing for yourself and it's all about, how you do as an individual to being part of a massive team and a manufacturer. So you're not only representing yourself, your team, the brand, you're just a very small part effectively of the big picture. And it's been able to understand how to work in that team and the dynamics, you've got your board members at Bentley to your team managers, to your tyre guys, to your teammates, to the chef, to the trainer, all these different dynamics. You've got to be able to understand how to work with everybody and, get the best out of everybody. And that takes some time. And again, people like Martin were kind of pro at that because they were used to working in a big team from Formula One. Whereas for me, it was always a case of, I've been with a relatively small team, just working in maybe 2 cars and a few people, maybe 10 people, to suddenly a team that's got 100 people in it. So it's a different dynamic, but yeah, it's all part of the learning process, right?
And as a sports person, obviously, people say about you need a different kind of mentality. Like, how different are you when you get in the car knowing that there could potentially be a crash or something like that ahead of you that are you just able to switch off from it? Or
I think everything kind of, it's really strange. Nurse it more or latterly, like since I've been married, my wife says she's sort of going to race mode, and it's a subconscious thing, but we all do it almost like a week before or whatever. Your mindset's changed. It's not something that you just purposely switch, but your mind just switches fully onto the race. You're thinking about the car, the tyres, the weekend, the weather, everything. And what happens is that so you're not really thinking about the dangers of it because I don't think you think about that. I mean, I think you acknowledge they're there, but I think if you worry about it, then that's a problem. But I think you're so focused on the job and how you're going to perform and execute, not make mistakes, that it kind of consumes you. Mentally, it's really quite draining. So physically, it's hard in the car, but mentally, there's so much stuff going on around the course of, like at Le Mans, you're there for a full week. So you get there on the Sunday, you have scrutineering, technical inspection, and then on Tuesday, you're hanging around all day, having meetings. Then Tuesday night, you're sort of testing from like 7 till midnight. So by the time you actually finish and debrief, it's sort of 1:30, 2 in the morning, you get to bed. Then you do the same again on Wednesday. So that's another late night. And then Thursday, I think Thursday and Friday you have sort of some, Friday you have some rest day. And then Saturday it all starts again for the 24 hours. So there's lots of meetings, there's lots of hanging around also. There's a lot of stuff going on. So mentally, it's quite draining. So, so there is a lot going on. It's quite consuming.
And people talk a lot about the science behind the cars and the engineering and things like that advancing over time. But do you find it as well on like for the drivers as well, like their physical science and things like that, start advancing?
There's all the time. It's such fine lines. I think it's like in all sports. So it's probably like in football. I think as I said before, I started doing a little bit of training when I first started. Now I see the young kids and they're all like virtually triathletes, because it's like you start with a bit of a run. Oh, I'm going to start cycling. And then it's like you're doing long bike rides. And then suddenly, everybody's competing. You got on Strava, so people are competing against each other. So it just builds, doesn't it? And everyone's pushing everybody. And, I tried to instill that a little bit when I was at Bentley, is that, between all the drivers, in a positive way, we'd all try and push each other. Let's train a bit harder, let's work a bit, let's how can we do a better job? And I think it's the same in football as well. Now, you look back in 10, 15 years ago, they probably train, but not to the way they do now. They don't look after the body in the same ways. They don't eat as well. And I think Formula One or motorsport in general is becoming more and more involved, and because everybody's just trying to find out that little bit of an edge. So yes, I think from a technology point of view, the cars are becoming more involving. I think there's more data to look at now. We can analyze everything, so we're always looking at driver performance, ways to improve. We get a report after every race comparing drivers, fastest lap, fastest stints. So we've got all that analysis. So there's as much data as you want to look at. So we have to write a report after every race about the car and the team and how it performed and what needs to be better. So there's a lot more to it than just getting in the car and driving around in circles. There's people say, what do you do when you're not driving? Well, there's actually now quite a lot of work to do just between races, So it's good.
And you went on to win the Le Mans 24 Hour.
Yeah.
I believe you're the first British man in 5 years, and another British man didn't do it for another 5 years.
Yeah.
Afterwards, how was it? Because you drove across the finish line, didn't you? What was that moment like?
Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, I remember them saying to me they wanted me to finish the race, so it was the last 2 hours. And of course, I think we're leading by a lap, so you think at this point you've got nothing to you've got nothing. It can only go wrong, can't it? I think you're driving along, you're thinking about every gear shift, you listen to every engine note, thinking, please don't break down, especially not while I'm at the helm, kind of thing. And I remember watching the clock as you're driving around. There's a big clock on the start finish line, and it just seemed to be just counting down so slowly. It was the longest 2 hours of my life, but to actually get to cross over the line and achieve the victory was obviously fantastic. And it didn't take, it probably took the best part of a week till it really sunk in. I mean, you kind of caught up in it at the time, but it's so much going on, you don't even realise I have a chance to take it in. But yeah, it was obviously a great moment. And actually the following year, I returned, although Bentley decided at the end of that year to stop racing because it had a 1-2 and kind of achieved everything they wanted to do from the racing programme. So they decided to stop. I came back the following year with Audi, with Johnny Herbert and a guy called Jamie Davis, and we had pole position for the following year's race, and we were leading it with about 4 hours to go. We had a small mechanical issue that I think we're leading by a lap, and we had to fix the car, and we went a lap down, so we went from a lap ahead to a lap behind. We caught up. I think we lost it by something like 20 seconds. So after 24 hours, so it was nearly a back-to-back win, which would have been that hadn't been done for quite a few years. I think from maybe Derek Bell was the last person to do that, and that would have been really special, but unfortunately, it didn't quite happen, but still a good race. And are you aware of how big of an achievement that was for Bentley? Because it wasn't the first time in 70 years. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? You get there and they start throwing all these stats out, and it's it'll be the first time in 70 years, and it's all added pressure. But you just got to try and focus on the job. And Dr. Pefkin, who at the time was the CEO of Bentley, was kind of saying just before the race, we must finish first and second. And it's that's great, but it's a 24-hour race. There's so many things ahead of us. All the different cars out there, the weather conditions. To actually say we must finish first and second, it's quite a statement. But fortunately, we were able to do it. So it was a dream, a dream for them to come true as well. So so to be a small part of that history is nice, really. And going into it, did you think that was possible? Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the first 2 years, the car was fast but fragile. So they actually built a brand new car for the 2003 season. So I did a lot of testing with that the previous year, and I knew once we got that car, I knew it was light years over what we had previously, and I knew that we were going to be the favourites. It was a case of it was almost going to be between us and our sister car. So in my car, it was myself, Tom Christensen, Ronaldo Capella, who were both sports car legends. I mean, Tom's the most winning Le Mans driver. He's won it 9 times. And the other car was Mark Blundell, David Brabham, and Johnny Herbert. So they were kind of the Formula 1 kind of guys. And it was really a case of us against them. So we all got on really well, and we still do, but there was definitely some inter-team kind of rivalry, because we kind of knew between us that one of us was probably going to win it. So it's just a case of who had the cleanest run and who didn't make mistakes. So, but yeah, luckily for us, I think they had a small problem in the race and lost 20-30 seconds, and that was enough to make the difference. So
it's amazing how over such a long period of time.
Exactly.
How do they go about choosing the teams? Is it that them guys were from Formula One, so I think so?
Yeah, I think they kind of thought we'll have a sports car drivers team, perceived sports car drivers team and an F1 drivers team, and kind of just split it up and do it that way. Really, I mean, to be honest with you, we were all within a whisper of each other, so you could have split it. You could have done it any different way. I got on really well with the other guys. Quite often when we're testing, we'd split the teams up, and I'd drive with like Johnny Herbert or Mark Blundell, and we'd all get on really well. So yeah, they could have split it anyway, really, to be fair. But I think they just thought, well, they're kind of the F1 guys, they're kind of sports car guys, and it was quite nice actually, because they had they tend to have a lot more press around them, obviously, because they're more well known. So we just kind of used to wind them up saying, you do that, you're going to do your press conference, we'll just focus on the car, and we just try and do little things to get sort of wind them up really. But yeah, so it was good experience.
And did you feel like you were committed to Bentley in the fact that you wouldn't change teams too much? Or
yeah, in our contract we're not allowed to drive for anybody else. So pretty much the contract was that can only drive for Bentley. So actually in 2002 my actual role, they only actually ran one car, so my role was more like test development and reserve driver, but I had a contract for 2003, and I had quite a few opportunities to go and race at Le Mans with some other manufacturers, but Bentley wouldn't let me do it because it would have been good in some respects to get more experience, but they also didn't want me to go and drive for another manufacturer, because once you've got your name on with a manufacturer, you become known with it, and if you go and drive for somebody else, it kind of dilutes that. So they were quite protective. So yeah, it's been good.
After winning what's one of the biggest races in motorsport, how do you keep that motivation to keep going? What inspired you to carry on?
I think at that point, it's I think personally, I'm just very self-motivated in the respect that, it's great you achieve it within a couple of weeks. Once it's sunk in, it's like, right, that's great. But then, the world carries on, so you got to keep the momentum going, and you got to keep winning, and you got to keep doing, you got to keep racing, and particularly racing, it's got quite short memory. So you could have a massive win, for a hero, for a week or two, you're a massive hero, and then it's all news. So you've got to keep, you got to keep delivering, you got to keep performing. So. While you enjoy all the spoils that brings and the publicity and stuff, once that's sort of worn away, you just got to keep going really. So, and it's funny because sports car racing, Le Mans is obviously the pinnacle, but there is, we obviously do race year round, but it's not particularly that well known. So, most people know about Le Mans, but they don't know about a lot of the other races that's going on. But we are racing all year round. So
how many times a year are you?
Probably about 15 times a year, I would say. So plus, obviously the testing and stuff. But there is a series called the American Le Mans Series, which I raced in after that. I went to race in America, and that was really quite a big series. And that was using basically the same cars, but in America it was quite big. So we'd race all around North America. So California, we'd do Canada, we'd do Florida, some street races. So you get to race those cars that you would one minute you'd be racing on the Mulsanne Straight doing 200 plus mile an hour, and the next minute you're downtown in the street track. It's bumpy and twisty and everything else. So, but the fans love it. Especially when some of the races will go into the night time as well, to see all the brake discs glowing up and the lights on the cars, which is different obviously to Formula One. It offers a different, it's a different offering, but people enjoy it.
Obviously, in sport, there tends to be a limited time on how long you can sustain that career. So, how aware are the drivers of that there's?
I think you become aware of it. I don't think you become aware of it till you sort of get into that age. I mean, I'm 44 now. I mean, I've just stopped now. Bentley would have liked me to carry on for another sort of 3 years. And I could probably carry on, but because in some respects, the physical side of it, like in football, once you sort of from a physical point of view, that's your limitation. If you get a bit slow or injury, motorsport obviously it's less hard on your body, so it's more about eyesight, your frame of mind, etc., etc. And I could have carried on, but I definitely felt that I was I was flatlining, probably going down, and then continuing to improve. So, I had some young co-drivers come in like at 19, 20, and I could match them on speed, and I had the experience over them. But it was just getting harder. The travelling was getting harder. I didn't want to be travelling as much, and the motivation was there, but just to a different extent. So I just got to the point where I was not looking forward to. I'd always normally can't wait to go away racing. I was getting to the point where I didn't have that same quite desire. Not that I didn't love it, I just didn't have that quite same desire. So I definitely felt it was time to be, looking to stop. And obviously with some of the other business interests as well outside of racing, that they were starting to take, more of my time up. And I just felt that, I felt the time was right. And I've been happy with the decision, really.
Did you consciously plan before leaving?
Kind of. Or? Yeah, I mean, I kind of, at the end of 2017, I was thinking about it. But then we've been developing a new Bentley race car, so they tend to go in 3-year cycles. So we had 14, 15, 16. We did 17 as well, and then for 18 was going to be a brand new Continental GT comes out. And generally, when you come out with a new car, you have an advantage for a year or so because it's all brand new and everything else. And I didn't want to quit and then bring out a new car and then it'd be really successful. So I wanted to carry on into the new car. Which I did beginning of 2018, but unfortunately the car wasn't quite performing as it should do. And the first couple of races it was struggling, and it became obvious to me it was going to be more of a development learning year than a winning year, and I just didn't really feel like I had the sort of energy to develop another car. I wanted to go and win, and if I can't win I wasn't really that interested. So I got 2 races in and thought, right, I think I want to stop because I didn't have the motivation. So I said to Bentley I want to stop, and they were supportive. And so I stepped back. So I stay on now as an brand ambassador. So I'm going to go to all the races and working with the team and the drivers, trying to maximise the performance out of them all. I'm still open to doing some races, but at the moment I haven't got anything planned. Just doing a little bit of rallying in the Greenlight car for a bit of fun. But yeah.
When you're looking at other opportunities, what is it that inspires you to take them on? Is there anything?
I think at this stage in my career, if I do anything, it wants to be something. It wants to be fun, and I want to be successful. I want to do something that's going to win. I don't really want to go and do something that is, a bit sort of Mickey Mouse or not really, competitive. Because usually what happens is the ones that are competitive or are fun, then they're the ones you're going to have an accident with or whatever else. So I think it's got to be fun. So it might be with some co-drivers that I've been with in the past that we've had, I enjoyed working with or driving with, and in a car or in an event that we've got a chance of being successful or being competitive. Because there's nothing worse in anything. If you've got a competitive nature and you go to something and you can't be competitive, then it doesn't really just to take part for me isn't enough. I need to be able to at least have a chance of fighting for a win or a podium at least.
So we're here at the Greenlight Offices today. Is this what takes up a lot of your time now, or?
Starting to, yeah. I mean, obviously, we started Greenlight probably about a couple of years ago now, and it's really starting to build momentum, and we're having some real traction now with our clients and working with Ben and Milhenge. He's pretty much been kind of sort of the head guy here at Greenlight and kind of running it. So I'm trying to just help him a little bit and support him with that, and looking for new opportunities. But it's great because it means I get to still continue to work in sport, in certainly within motorsport as well. But also, for me, I'm learning quite a lot about golf and football and some of the other sports and athletics as well. So we've got an exciting partnership which has just been announced with the University of Holland Team GB, which is something really exciting and pretty much a first of its kind, I believe. It's a 6-year partnership. So that's going to be exciting. So I'm looking forward to working alongside Ben and the university and Team GB with that. And hopefully it'll be the first of many such partnerships.
Do you want to just briefly explain what Greenlight do?
Yeah. So, obviously what Greenlight do is really work in partnerships in sport. So we're looking for opportunities more in the commercial side, the business side of the sport. It's using sport as a way of doing opportunities, whether it be B2B, B2C, or just purely from a marketing point of view. It's really speaking with companies and finding out what their sort of challenges and goals are, and we look for opportunities ways of sort of meeting some of their goals. You know, I think sport's got a lot to offer. You know, it's competitive, it's exciting. There's a lot of opportunity there, and you know, it offers companies something a little bit different to maybe what they've done previously. You know, with marketing and promotion, and you know, we feel at Greenlight there's some real opportunities there. And so far, from the work that we've done, we see this. You know, it really fits. You know, a lot of people.
Were you aware, like when you were a driver, that all this was going on behind the scenes in terms of sponsorship?
I've always been aware of the business side of it. You know, business is obviously in anything. You know, you see the sport, you see the cars on track, but you've got to understand all the business and the funding to get the cars on track. It's the same with the football team. You see the football team, you see all these great salaries and these great stadiums, but there's also a lot of business that goes on in order to pay those salaries and put the games on. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that's maybe not quite as glamorous, but is absolutely probably as important, if not more important. So, you know, I've always been aware of it. And, you know, I think with both Ben and myself, you know, we've both been involved in sport. And, you know, I think now with our experience, we can leverage that experience to help get the best deals and negotiate the best deals for our clients. And that's, you know, something that is, while I can't drive anymore, or I can't, or, you know, competitively, I can use my experience that I've learned and hopefully use that going forward with Greenlight.
So in terms of the racing industry, what was like the biggest change you saw over your career?
The change. I just think really the professionalism. I mean, it's like anything; it's always evolving. I think in motorsport, you know, with technology, it just evolves so quickly. You know, when I first started, we used to get in the race car and you'd have like a normal like rev counter, like, you know, tachograph kind of thing. And like now it's all full data and it's just, you know, it's like with Formula 1 car. If you look at a Formula 1 car from 5 years ago, it would look so out of date. You know, nothing dates like a Formula 1 car. And I think technology is just moving at such a pace. And even, you know, now probably the last 2 years, it's probably changed again. And that's great to see. It's fantastic. You know, we're obviously going into a new era where, you know, the combustion engine is almost going to become almost irrelevant. You know, we're going to go into electric vehicles and then probably ultimately hydrogen vehicles. So the next 10 years, both in motorsport and in the car industry in general, there's going to be a massive change. You know, so that's quite an exciting thing. I'm quite glad that I was racing when it was, you know, petrol engines, you know, V8s, V12s, you know, loud, you know, racing engines, all that kind of stuff. I'm quite glad I was part of that era. But I think going forward that the future is going to be like the Formula E and the electric vehicles and stuff, which are less exciting, but that's the future and it's going to be here to stay.
Brilliant. So we're going on to the final 4 questions, which I'm asking everyone. So yeah. First off, who or what has been your biggest inspiration throughout your career? Now,
it sounds cheesy and probably, you know, if I say my dad, it's going to be a little bit like, oh, yeah, probably everyone says the same thing. But I mean, I think from my point of view, obviously, you know, because he used to rally, he was the one that got me into, you know, he was the first time that got my bum in a go-kart. So without that, you know, without having that first sort of contact with motorsport, I probably would have had it ultimately, but certainly, you know, from that point, you know, he was quite instrumental in getting me started and obviously supported me, you know, a lot through my career. So, you know, he's been the biggest inspiration. And also Dave Scott, who I mentioned earlier as well, you know, who my dad used to sort of sponsor and help a little bit, you know, just seeing him and you know, seeing the fact that he was a race driver and everything else, it gave me the kind of inspiration that was something that I wanted to do. And obviously as a career, it's something that probably there's a good amount of you know young men that want to take that as a career. But I would say really those 2 guys have been the biggest inspiration. I mean, I think there's been various people throughout your career, you know, whether it be my dad to get me started, or whether it be, you know, Dave Scott, or whether it be Martin Brundle later on. I think throughout your career, there's you know, I think when you have a long career, you have different sort of spurts of motivation, depending on where you are at your career. I think when you're always looking ahead, you're always looking to where do I want to be next? You know, who do I want to be like? Who do I want to try and emulate? And I think that's changing all the time. So it's hard to sort of say just one person, but you know, if you start at the beginning, then it would have to be my dad.
So how much do you feel your personal brand has played a role in your career? So like, how much has being you helped you get to where you are?
It's an interesting question, really, because I think when you're non-professional, it's less so, because everyone's just trying to figure themselves out and trying to figure out how to make it happen. I think as you become a professional, then you really are kind of competing against your peers. So it's like, why would you choose him over them? So I think generally it becomes down to ability-wise, pretty much. It's like a bit like football. Everybody's can play to a certain level. Everyone's, it's a given. So then you have to start saying, well, about personality. Is he more professional than him? So I think I've always been quite professional and quite dependable, reliable. Especially when you're working with manufacturers, there's lots of guys that come in to be super quick, and then you put them in front of a sponsor and they can't talk to a sponsor, or they can't manage. When they're speaking with management and stuff, they say the wrong things and stuff. So I've been quite good and diplomatic, and I think that's the key to having a long career. And that's something I'm working with now with the young Bentley drivers. Is they've got in a Bentley, they're a factory driver, but they all say to me, I want to have a long career. How do I do it? And I think a lot of it is being able to be professional. So I think your brand, as you become, for sustainability, your brand becomes more important, because in order to keep going, you need to be able to understand what your strengths and weaknesses and how to use those best, if that makes sense.
Yeah, do you think there's people who maybe have succeeded in one team, but if they'd have been in a different team, wouldn't have succeeded because of the personalities and the team makeup?
I think so, yeah. I think it's important. I think even with footballers, they get in a situation where they're in a comfort zone and working with a manager and people they like, and then they go to another team and it just falls apart. And I think you've got to be a little bit of a chameleon, and I don't mean that in a bad way. You just need to be able to understand the people you work with, and I think even in racing, when you're working in a big team, it's knowing strengths and weaknesses, knowing your strengths, and saying, well, I know where I'm weak, so it's working with people that can plug those gaps. And I think a good team is somebody that can, like we have 3 drivers in a car, so if we're all good at the same thing, doesn't necessarily mean it's a good result. It's all about saying, okay, well, he's really good at that, but not so good at that, so I'm going to help him with that. Do you understand? So
yeah.
that the stronger the team, the better chance of getting a result. And so I think it's understanding where you're good and where perhaps you're not so good.
And could you give us one tip, trick, or nugget of information about your industry that might be useful to everyone? This is a tough one.
It's a tough one. And kind of a little bit about what I just discussed, I think a lot of it is hard work. I would say that when you asked me about after winning Le Mans, you could sit back on your laurels, but in some respects the phone doesn't just ring off the hook. Even though you've been successful, that's only really the start of the journey. It's not like that's really just the start of it. You got to keep working hard, and I think never be complacent, because I think there's a lot of drivers I've worked with in the past that are as good, if not better, than I am, and they haven't succeeded, and purely because they haven't really worked at it. I think I never really had a manager, so I've always kind of done my own stuff. So I've always kind of pushed, and I've always worked really hard, and I've always done that. So I think, people say hard work, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's not, because actually you've got to work really hard out the car, and you've got to work really hard from a physical point of view and train and all the rest of it. So I think you just got to work hard and be professional.
Final question. Yeah. Final question is, if someone is looking to get into a similar career to you, what would your advice be to them? I assume you're doing this quite a lot with the young Bentley drivers.
Yeah. I mean, again, sort of covering off of what I just said before, really, is having that mentality of being able to keep pushing and never rest on your laurels, because you're only as good as your last race, and people have short memories, so you've always got to keep performing. You've got to be professional, and that's really all you can do is just keep trying to do better every day. Just keep, whether it be you want to be fitter, you want to be faster, you want to work better. Just every day, just try and do better. in the last day, and that's all you can do.
To get into karting, do you have to have your own car, or are there ways you can?
There are ways. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, fortunately with motorsport, it's an expensive sport, so it's not like you can have a pair of football boots and you go racing. But there are opportunities. There are a lot of kart tracks now, local kart tracks where you can go along and you can get started. But it is a hard sport to get into. But there are schemes out there where if you get into karting, there are scholarships and things now you can get into where, if you are good, you can progress. I mean, you've seen people like Lewis Hamilton. You don't necessarily have to come from money to succeed. It is harder because the opportunities are limited, but there are opportunities to do it. And I believe in anything. If you really want it, you can find a way of making it happen. And I think if you're inspired to do it and you've got the willpower to search it out, there's opportunities out there for sure.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem, pleasure.
Cheers. Just quickly as well, if anyone wants to find you on social media, how do they find you?
That's a good one. Okay, so I am on Twitter and I am on Instagram. I think on Twitter I think it's The Guy Smith, and on Instagram it's Mr. Guy Smith 7, I believe. So yeah.
You just search for Guy Smith. I'm sure
I'll
you'll
search for
pop
Guy
up.
Smith. Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Once again, thank you for your time.
No problem. Thanks.
So that's it for another episode of the My Journey podcast. A huge thanks to Guy for being part of it. I'm sure you'll agree it's fascinating to hear how he went from racing around in go-karts to being at the top of motorsport, a career most of us could only dream of emulating. And of course, thanks to you guys for listening all the way through. As I said in the intro, I just want to get more people listening to this, so I've got a cheeky request to finish with. As soon as I stop talking and the music begins to play, go to your preferred messaging app and send a link to this episode to the last person you sent a message to. Is that fair enough? As ever, if you've got any feedback or you want to keep up to date with the podcast, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter @TheMJSocial. Until next time, thanks for listening.